Johnson?
Here. Here.
Mrs. Campworth here. Ms. Stearns?
Here.
Mr. Whitcomb?
Here.
Mrs. Ressler?
Here. Please stand or sit for the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll start us off. All right. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America,
And to the republic
the
for which
republic
it
for
stands,
which it stands,
one nation
one
under
nation,
God,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and
liberty and
justice
justice
for all.
for all.
for all. Thank you very much. Can I get a motion to approve the March 31st, 2020 special meeting minute?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Whitcomb, second by Ms. Gleason. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Okay. Mr. Whitcomb?
Aye.
Mrs. Gleason?
Aye.
Mr. Canning?
I will abstain as I was sick that day.
Mr. Johnson?
Okay, yeah.
Mrs. Campworth, aye. Ms. Stearns?
Aye.
Mrs. Ressler?
Aye. Do we have any comments from the public? Item 3.1.
No, I didn't get any.
No comments received.
Okay. Thank you very much. Moving on to new business. Ms. Morrison.
Item 4.1 is the bills, addendum to bills, payroll, and CDS bills. These items are being recommended for full board approval.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Canning, second by Ms. Gleason. Any discussion?
I just had a couple of questions, Brittany. There was, in the bills this month, ENA services jumped from 11K to 60K. What is that for?
I believe that was, we had a couple of invoices from the past couple of months. They were being forwarded to the wrong person, so we just had to true up some invoices. We had some outstanding.
Okay. And then I noticed there was still a lot of like supplies and groceries on this month. We've been out of school. Is that just catching up from the time that we were there in March?
Yes. So the bills that you see for all of the groceries and the supplies that are on P cards, those are always going to be a month behind. So that would cover everything that occurred in March as well.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Okay. Mr. Canning?
Aye.
Mrs. Gleason?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Campworth, aye. Ms. Stearns?
Aye.
Mr. Whitcomb?
Aye.
Mrs. Ressler?
Aye.
Item 4.2 is the District 228 surety bond renewal through April of 2021 that covers the district's funds in our imprest and health insurance bank accounts. The bond will continue to be held through the Sander Group, and the amount will remain the same at $650,000. This item is being recommended for full board approval.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Whitcomb, second by Mr. Canning. Any discussion?
How much is in this bank account?
The balance for both bank accounts is roughly $1 million.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Okay. Mr. Whitcomb?
Aye.
Mr. Canning?
Aye.
Mrs. Gleason?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Campworth, aye. Ms. Stearns?
Aye.
Mrs. Ressler?
Aye.
Item 4.3 is going to be the contract amendment for the end of this school year with Illinois School Bus and Alpha School Bus. The terms of the negotiated agreement include payment of our normal monthly billed amounts with a 20% discount, reimbursement to the district should Illinois and Alpha School Bus receive any federal funds, reimbursements, tax credits, etc. reimbursement to the district should we not receive transportation claim monies for these expenditures. Illinois and Alpha School Bus will be providing the district with certified payroll records to evidence the continued payment of staff. And we've also negotiated that our contracted rate increases will be frozen for the next 2 fiscal years at 3%. This amendment has been reviewed and is being recommended to the full board for approval.
So moved. Evelyn.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Gleason, second by Mr. Canning. Any discussion?
So just,
Do we have
go ahead, Debbie.
any questions? I mean, any stipulations in there that each bus must have cameras and they should be working?
Isn't that by law they have to have them in there?
Well, I know there's been a couple instances where some situation has happened and, oh, the camera wasn't working that day.
Oh, yeah.
That should be like on a checklist.
We don't have it written out in the contract, like you said, because they would be required by law. But in terms of this particular item, this is just for amending our payment terms for.
Yeah, I get that. It's just a question that while we're discussing them.
Right. What about us having our own bus fleet?
Well,
I see a little school district over there in Oak Forest yesterday, and they had their own little fleet of buses.
well, the fleet of buses that you see at Oak Forest High School right now, those are our mini buses. Those are just for a certain number of students. I think they're 14 passenger vans. In terms of the district getting its own fleet, that process would take well over a year to get in place. School buses cost approximately $90,000 each. And
If we buy them,
we would have to hire our own staff to run them. And we would also have to hire a transportation administrator. But again, that process is not something that can be done quickly. It would take at least a year, probably more, to get a system like that in place.
I was just looking at the fact that we're not going to be using transportation if this thing continues for all of 2021 too. 20 and 21 school year.
So a couple of things, Mark. Right now, we're planning on being reimbursed from the state. So this is just to keep employees of Illinois School Bus working. If we're not being reimbursed for this, we wouldn't be making this recommendation. We also looked at purchasing school buses and hiring school bus drivers years back, and it's significantly more money. So the board has decided to continue with outsourcing.
Okay. I'm not sure if I misread it or not. I want to go over what are we going to do about senior night and those scholarships that those kids need for college?
Mark, hang on. Does this have to do with 4.3? Can we, I just want to make sure we address questions regarding 4.3.
Okay, that's true. That's good. Okay, then, yeah. Let's vote on it.
Yeah, hold your question, but if we can come back to it at another time. But I just,
Okay, sure.
Are there any other questions regarding the Illinois School Bus, Alpha School Bus contract amendment?
One question for me, and I guess it would go to Bill. You just mentioned, Bill, we got some money coming, money coming from the state. How ironclad do you or Brittany think that is at this point in time?
I think in the short term, we're okay. As this goes on, I think it becomes much more risky.
That we wouldn't receive that funding, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And there's a stipulation in here, if we don't receive the money, we don't have to pay them the money.
They have to give us the money back, the school bus.
Correct. Right.
Wow.
Because I don't think anything is ironclad at this point in time. Nobody knows what's going to happen, obviously.
Right.
True.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
All right, can I get roll call, please?
Mrs. Gleason,
Aye.
Mr. Canning,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mrs. Camworth, aye. Ms. Stearns,
Aye.
Mr. Whitcomb,
Aye.
Mrs. Wrestler.
Aye.
So item 4.4 goes along with that. It's the contract renewal for next year with both Illinois and Alpha School Bus for fiscal year 2021. As I mentioned before, the rate increase will be frozen next year and the year after at 3%. It's important to note, though, that the district has been communicating with both vendors, and we're going to continue to monitor routes for maximum efficiency and to help keep transportation costs low. You might recall last year we completed a transportation audit, and we actually did see some pretty significant savings from that. So we kind of have an agreement with both vendors that we're going to continue to monitor all of the routes that are on the road. Routes that have little to no attendance will either just be rerouted to combine with a different route or just removed altogether. So we are continuing this process, making sure that we are analyzing routes and keeping costs as low as possible. So for this reason, the renewal is being recommended for full board approval.
Can I get a motion, please?
Okay, so moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Camworth, second by Ms. Gleason. Any discussion? Roll
How
call.
much do we expect that contract to be? Dollar amount.
Well, for the end of this year, our contracted routes will cost approximately 1.3 million, which is a $350,000 savings from last year. Obviously, that includes the fact that we are paying now at a discounted rate. But if we hadn't seen that discounted rate, I would expect to have saved approximately $125,000 to $150,000 from last year. So what we're doing with auditing routes, working with Illinois School Bus is working. We are seeing savings, and we are definitely continuing to keep an eye on that to make sure that savings continue to grow.
Okay. Because we should see a significant drop since oil prices are in the tank right now, right?
Right.
Right now.
But the thing that I think is important to note with that is obviously what's going on right now is not the norm. And I don't know how comfortable I feel banking on that lasting for, extended periods of time. So I think it's smart for the district to use historical rate trends in order to help determine this kind of information, not just guessing.
They also,
Okay.
too, Mark, for your information, when, like in the winter, if they start getting hit with surcharges, they really hold out to the last minute before they come and hit us with that as well.
Oh, okay. Great. Well, I think it's great that because I know we projected 120,000 in savings back last summer, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know,
We was gonna say,
it's not gas, right? It's diesel on those, right? Are they diesel or are they gas? So diesel is
They're diesel, but it's, well, yeah, that's true.
but it's gonna drop still. Diesel is
Huh?
diesel price is gonna drop too
I hope.
because the demand is less.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's great. Auditing saved 125,000 to 150. That's huge.
Yeah.
Any other questions regarding 4.4? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Camworth, aye. Mrs. Gleason,
Aye.
Mr. Canning,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Ms. Stearns,
Aye.
Mr. Whitcomb,
Aye.
Mrs. Wrestler.
Aye.
Item 4.5 is the contract renewal with Smithereen Pest Management for extermination services in fiscal year 2021. The district has negotiated no rate increase for next year. Smithereen has provided quality service at a reasonable price for many years. For that reason, this contract is being recommended for full board approval.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Whitcomb, second by Mr. Canning. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Whitcomb,
Aye.
Mr. Canning,
Yeah. Oh, aye. Aye.
Mrs. Gleason,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mrs. Camworth, aye. Ms. Stearns,
Aye.
Mrs. Wrestler.
Aye. Dr. Williams, item 4.6.
4.6 is the instructional materials adoption. The board last month reviewed all of the textbooks and supplemental materials that are up for recommended to the full board for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Canning, second by Ms. Gleason. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Canning,
Aye.
Mrs. Gleason,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mrs. Camworth, aye. Ms. Stearns,
Aye.
Mr. Whitcomb,
Aye.
Mrs. Wrestler.
Aye. Dr. Goggins, item 5, personnel recommendations.
Under resignations, Taylor Nispel. Under employment, Nadine Call and Camille Scott Alford. These are being recommended to the full board for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Gleason, second by Mr. Canning. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Gleason,
Aye.
Mr. Canning,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mrs. Camworth, aye. Ms. Stearns,
Aye.
Mr. Whitcomb,
Aye.
Mrs. Wrestler.
Aye. All right. Before we adjourn, I want to give a special thank you to our administrators for, I know that times right now are very difficult and all of us are trying to adjust and do what's best for our students and for the district. So I really can't thank everyone enough, teachers for helping students out right now, and even our students for complying with all the requests that we've probably made of them. So just a huge thank you to everyone in the district, especially our administrators. But with that being said, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Gleason, second by Mr. Whitcomb. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you guys very much. Have a wonderful evening. Stay safe, stay well.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
All right. Hey, Mark.
Dan,
Yes.
Mark,
opening.
do you have a question?
Did I have a question?
Yeah.